This is Arab Talk on KPOO San Francisco on 89.5 FM. This is Arab Talk with Jess and Jamal. I'm Jess Jamal.
And this is Jamal Dajani.
Well, Jamal, we got a lot to talk about today. What we're going to begin to talk about is this amazing display of democracy in the Middle East and Arab world. We are on the precipice, and I'm hoping you can get the sarcasm in my voice, of the unfolding of the beautiful, amazing experiment of democracy.
And now you're stretching it far that people are starting to believe you.
No, but here's the issue. We're going to talk about the so-called Israeli election, and I'll tell you why I think it's so-called. It's also so-called democracy, because we're going to talk about why that's so-called, that you would call Israel a democracy when the majority, when over 30% of the people who are, quote, citizens of the state are not afforded full representative rights. And we're also going to talk about the fact that it appears, Jamal, that Benjamin Netanyahu may be able to have enough of a coalition formed that he'll be able to form the next coalition government of extremist right-wing parliamentary government under his wing and become, for his fifth term, prime minister. And what will be interesting about that is that the collection of political groups that he had to cajole, that he had to promise, that he had to kind of align himself with, represents, I mean, we already know that there are right-wing extremist views among, the Israeli political elite. But the groups that he had to align himself with are not just racist, are not just exclusionary, are not just extremists, but really do call for the mass expulsion of, over 20% of their own population, let alone the expulsion of indigenous Palestinians on the land. Having said all that, Jamal, I hope our listeners can understand that what we're going to be talking about is the faux Israeli democratic election. So I'm going to send it over to you. Does it look like Benjamin Netanyahu will, in fact, be able to form a coalition government and become the next prime minister?
Yeah, I mean, all indications lead to that conclusion. This is, it's a fait accompli, really, that he will be the next prime minister for Israel. This is his fifth term. He managed to pull it off again.
Yet again,
by also polarizing the nation. And this time, there was something different. This time, he had the help of Donald Trump. I mean, people are not taking this seriously, but the whole idea behind the annexation of the Golan Heights
and the annexation of the West Bank
and his promise, now he has to deliver. So his promise, now he's promising to annex the settlements in the West Bank.
Right.
So we always, actually, last time he put out the statement, if you remember, warning his core support that Arabs are voting in droves.
My God, Arabs are voting.
Yeah, this is what he was referring to Palestinians with Israeli citizenship, that they are voting in drove and mobilized.
Arabs are voting.
Exactly. When he felt he was kind of retreating, he just got everybody all worried, and then, of course, he won the elections. This time, it was a closer race between him and the Gantz, that's the other kind of finalist in the
former
election.
Military leader.
That's right. So he, the same thing. He polarized the country. He split the country. I mean, if anything, if you look at the whole conclusions, and this is, and I'm actually talking from the Israeli perspective. If you talk to, if you monitor the Israeli media, like I have been, they're telling you that, the country is divided more than ever. The elections that they've had.
But is it really divided?
Well, this is what they say. The elections has exposed its political, economic, and even tribal divisions. I mean, this is what they're telling you. you have people are divided between. Of course, he divided as far as between Jews and Arabs. Arabs of Israeli citizenship. He divided the religious Jews and secular Jews, Jews of European ancestry, of those Middle Eastern heritage, like Mizrahi Jews, and residents of the secular and high-tech metropolis of cities like Tel Aviv and Haifa, with poorer communities and small towns and villages. And last but not least, his core support, which is the West Bank settlements and
the extremists.
And also the role of Jerusalem, which is basically a very conservative city. So he managed to kind of create a coalition basically amongst the very far right out of all these groups, and split the country pretty much in half and polarized it.
But is it really? But Jamal, let me just, for clarification, when you talk in those terms, what it actually sounds like is that there is a left and a right to be polarized among Israelis. But the reality is, Jamal, there is a extreme right element, extremist right, and there's no other way to talk about it except right-wing extremists on the white side who call for expulsion of indigenous Palestinians, who call for annexation and taking over the entirety of historic Palestine. And then there is, and this is what Gantz was running on, what he called the center right. Now, the right do not believe in rights for Palestinians. They are on board with the settlements. So it's not really right and left like we have here in the United States, as if like they have in other parts of the world. We're talking about the difference between extremists, racist policies that Benjamin Netanyahu represents, and what we call center right, which are still very conservative, do not call for equal rights for all everybody living in historic Palestine. So I just don't want our listeners to get the wrong impression that somehow this represents, like we have here, left-leaning Democrats, liberal progressives versus Republicans. It's not the same.
Well, you're right about this. For example, if we're talking about the Labour Party, it's finished.
It's done.
It's
Khalas,
done.
We say khalas.
The Labour Party of Israel, which for many years was considered the progressive party, is pretty much has been reduced to very few seats. Every election they have actually taken or they ran against Netanyahu, they've lost seats in the Knesset. However, amongst let's say when we talk about Gantz and Netanyahu, like in contrast, which is the blue and white party led by the former military chief Benny Gantz, this is who I'm referring to, he got most of the votes in Tel Aviv, which is the country's, prosperous commercial and cultural center, as well as nearby suburb areas like Herzliya and other areas, very wealthy areas. So there is a difference. I've actually was looking at their map, the electoral map that they have there, and you can see the pockets. And obviously, if you want to look at, just give an example within Israel proper, cities and towns bordering Gaza,
right?
They all voted for Netanyahu.
Yeah, of course.
Big numbers.
Of course.
Because they view him as the savior. For example, Sderot. You've heard about Sderot.
Yeah,
they always so which is basically has a population largely a working class, religious, and by the way, they are Mizrahi, meaning they are from the Middle East, most of the population.
They're Arab Jews.
Yeah, or Middle Eastern descent. Netanyahu's Likud party received like 50% of the votes there, compared with 9%.
9%?
9% for his rival Blue and White Party, meaning those who supported Gantz. So this is just an example. In the settlement blocks, there was no race to
No,
tell you.
there can't be. There wouldn't be a race.
So you're talking about 800,000 settlers who live on stolen land.
Illegal settlements.
I don't have the final figure, but over 90% went. Basically, they supported Netanyahu. Overwhelmingly. So this is his core support.
But Jamal, what does it say? I mean, it does look like Netanyahu is going to be able to form a coalition. It's a parliamentary system that the Israelis have, which means that, basically the prime minister is the first person to be able to form a coalition that is able to get more than 60 votes in the 120-seat parliament. It looks like Netanyahu is going to be able to do that. And if you look at his coalition that is able to get to that 60-plus mark, we're talking about politicians and individuals in the country who are espousing policies that are akin to ethnic cleansing and forcible removal of Palestinians from the land, of stealing more Palestinian land, of denying equal rights to all people in historic Palestine. I mean, this is really a racist, exclusionary coalition that Netanyahu has put together. And yet we still are hearing in the media, in the U.S. media here, Jamal, every single time they talk about the Israeli democracy, what we hear is it's the only democracy in the Middle East. We hear about this great flourishing of democracy, the democratic process, when in fact, when you just scratch below the surface, even just a little bit, Jamal, this is not a democratic process.
Well, I mean, listen, of course it's not a democratic process, and the simple argument and we can do the math, look at the math, because at the end of the day, Israel controls the land between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River, right?
Full stop.
It's full stop. It's all about numbers. You can massage the language. You can say, well, what do you mean by control? What's the difference between controlling and annexing? What's the difference between annexation and occupation? All of these
But who controls? Who controls?
But the total control, the land between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River is under the control of Israel, which means, and these are numbers, right? Which means that you have 6.2 million Palestinians who have no say in determining their own future. And the numbers are about equal. According to Israeli stats,
yeah, these are Israeli
there are 6.5 Jewish Israelis who are living, and about
not living, but who are citizens.
Yeah, well, I said they are citizens of Israel, and then you have 6.2 million Palestinian residents. So the total is about 50-50, which actually we'll talk about it later on, which we can argue it's actually the Palestinian population
is much higher.
Is higher.
Right.
However, so Jewish Israelis, I mean, this is the summary of the Israeli elections in one sentence, right? Jewish Israelis got to vote on the future of 6.2 million Palestinians who have no say on determining their own future.
So I have a question for you, Jamal. How does the United States and Donald Trump and this administration and the Obama administration and all previous administrations get away with calling Israel a democracy when in fact it is a theocracy? We know that. It's a state.
Well,
and this is what Netanyahu said. He said a couple of things which should have made every American's hair light on fire, stand straight up. He said, Israel is a state for the Jewish people only.
Yeah.
Only. Yet almost 50% of the people living on that land, breaking news, are not Jewish. And yet the United States continues with this kind of hypocrisy, this kind of fantasy of continuing to use the word is the only democracy in the Middle East.
I think you'll find it even amongst Israelis, and the numbers are rising, who don't believe that statement. And they realize, and in fact, we're actually, this is gonna get solidified. The dreaded A word, which
What's the A word?
The A word for apartheid.
Well, that's not dreaded.
It's been
not a
used
dreaded
by
word.
Israelis themselves now, and now this terminology is going to come to total fruition, I would say, if Bibi Netanyahu, delivers on his promise to the settlers by annexing the West Bank. So if you look at it, just imagine this is like in the West Bank. You will have settlements about, some of them about half a kilometer away from a Palestinian village.
Less than a half a kilometer.
Where Jewish Israelis living in these settlements, they enjoy all the protection of the law under Israeli civilian law.
Right.
And then where you have basically neighbors that basically not only cannot drive on Jewish-only roads, but they cannot participate in voting during elections.
Right.
And they have no rights. I mean, how are they going to explain this? How are they going to define this?
Well, but it's a good point, Jamal, and the point that I'm trying to make about that is that it seems like they have been getting a pass. That the Israelis for 71 years now, we're getting close to 71 years, have been getting a pass on this issue of being labeled and referred to as a democracy. They're not a democracy. It's a theocracy. The way Bibi Netanyahu, their own prime minister, is defining the state. The way they are defining the state, it is a theocracy. It is not a democracy. And I want to also say, Jamal, if you look at the special case of Palestinians living in Jerusalem, the added racism, the added occupation, the added thumb or boot that's being put on the neck of Palestinians in Jerusalem is even increased because Palestinians living in Jerusalem have to pay this tax.
It's called the Arnona.
The Arnona tax, and not benefit as other citizens are able to benefit.
Well, let's just clarify this. So for our listeners who are not familiar with this caste system that Israel has created. Of course, Gaza's a whole different scenario.
We'll get to Gaza in a minute.
They are isolated, they are surrounded, and they live basically in the largest open-air prison. Then you have the West Bank, and the West Bank is broken in different areas, Area A and B and C and so forth. So the Palestinian Authority literally controls less than 7% of the whole historical Palestine, which is out of the 22%, which is supposed to be.
But to say they control it is not entirely true either.
Not entirely true. Nevertheless, the rest, where you have the 800,000 settlers, Israel has the full control over this. Now, East Jerusalem was annexed in the early 70s.
Right.
So East Jerusalem is like the Golan Heights. It's annexed. It's part and parcel of Israel, according to Israeli law.
But illegally annexed.
Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, but now they got also the recognition from Donald Trump.
Right.
Nevertheless, Palestinians living in East Jerusalem, they carry Israeli residency cards, blue cards. And what these residency cards just say, that they are temporary residents, not even permanent residents. So don't compare them to the green card in the United States or the permanent residency card. These are temporary residents, which means if you stay outside the country for more than 3 years, they can prevent you from coming back and you lose your residency. If you work in Ramallah, for example, in the West Bank, and you don't make the center of your life Jerusalem, you lose your residency. If you marry someone from outside, East Jerusalem, wherever, you'll have a problem uniting the family. So these are all temporary cards. So when you say they don't get anything, they do get something. Not full rights. This is where it's kind of like Jim Crow issues. They get to, actually, you have the right to vote in municipal elections.
Okay.
Most of them don't, because they don't feel that they have the proper representation. They pay taxes, so taxation without representation, they cannot vote in the prime minister, for example,
exactly.
election. And they get social benefits, some of the social benefits that the Israeli citizens get, but they don't have the full citizenship, which means that they are second-class citizens.
At best, second-class citizens, Jamal.
They're not citizens, actually. I'm sorry, because I consider Palestinians with Israeli citizenship as the second-class citizens.
Right.
Because they're not even second-class citizens. They're not citizens at all.
But that's my point.
Temporary residents.
And so to put this in even the broader context, we're talking about a situation where historically, and this goes back, this goes back almost to our founding, our founding fathers and mothers. I don't want to just say founding fathers, but in the birth of the United States, it's generally been accepted that American politicians do not interfere in the elections of other countries. It's just...
You're making a joke here.
Right. Okay, let me say
You're
this.
making a joke right here.
Let's just
and
say...
I'm not talking about Israel.
No. But let's just say are not supposed to interfere overtly in the elections of other countries. But what I mean by that is elected officials in this country
you're not supposed to.
You're not supposed to. What we do know is that the United States throws elections through their embassies and through the CIA all the time. But what is different in this election, Jamal, we had the President of the United States come out and say that that the Middle East and Palestinians would be better, listen to what he said, would be better off with Benjamin Netanyahu, an avowed racist, a person who wants to expel Palestinians, who has basically institute a policy that's been responsible for land theft as well as injuring and killing hundreds of Palestinians in the 20 years that or thousands for that matter, since the time he's been prime minister. And the United...
Not only this, just I'm looking at a tweet from Donald Trump.
And what did he say?
And the tweet shows a picture of Israelis celebrating, and I assume from the picture they look like from settlements. And they're carrying flags saying, Trump, make America great again flags. So Trump writes...
Wait, the Israelis are saying
carrying,
they have MAGA hats?
Yeah, not MAGA hats. They're carrying flags.
MAGA flags.
Banners that say, Trump, make America great again. And then Trump tweets, Trump flags being waved at Bibi Netanyahu victory in big caps celebration last night. So this is the connection. And then there is the common denominator, and people don't like to hear it.
But we have to say it, Jamal.
And the common denominator between Bibi Netanyahu and Donald Trump, and then people are going to say, ooh, you're anti-Semitic or something like this.
We'll get to that.
Common denominator, they share the same big funder. Who's that?
Well, it's got to be Sheldon Adelson.
Sheldon Adelson.
Is funding both. Yeah.
Sheldon Adelson is the major contributor to Donald Trump
and to Bibi Netanyahu.
Yes, this is a known fact. This is so the biggest winner, I have to say,
is Sheldon Adelson. But I thought you were going to say something else, Jamal. What I thought you were going to say is that what Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu share in common is the same political belief in division, in white nationalism, in white supremacy, in kind of this despotic approach to politics, calling for, Bibi Netanyahu is basically calling for ethnic cleansing. They share this kind of despotic political style. It's kind of interesting, Jamal. One of the things we haven't spoke about, there is more than a 50-50 chance that Bibi Netanyahu is going to be indicted in probably in June or July sometime. So there's the real question about whether or not he is actually going to be able to stay in office given the fact of these indictments coming up. Donald Trump, when the Mueller report comes out, he may not be indicted because of the Justice Department kind of recommendation that a sitting president cannot be indicted. However, under various states like the state of New York, there may be, and even within the Mueller report, there may be indictable acts that Donald Trump committed during the course of him being elected. So they share a lot in common in their leadership style, their belief in division, And frankly, I would say this: their belief in kind of white supremacy.
Well, and they share something also more than this. They also, I think, they're both survivors. So I'm not as optimistic about these indictments, just like I'm not that optimistic about the Mueller report, even though
I am.
you will have damning evidence and everything else. They are both the masters of spin, which they've been doing it, and they'll manage or even maybe call them the Teflon president and the Teflon prime minister.
Right.
And I'm not sure that all these indictments that Benjamin Netanyahu is facing now are going to stick on him. I mean, it might take years if he has managed to kind of duck all the, basically duck being thrown out of office or jail time. And I'm not sure, like, also Donald Trump will suffer as a result unless he gets defeated in the upcoming elections.
By the way, you're listening to Arab Talk on KPOO. We're at 89.5 FM in San Francisco. We're broadcasting live on 89.5 FM. We're broadcasting live on Facebook Live, Jamal Dajani 2. We're streaming at the KPOO.com website. So there's a lot of ways that you can listen to Arab Talk. But Jamal, I think the other issue, which we have to call this out, man. The Democrats. I mean, it doesn't surprise me too much that Republicans would show fidelity and loyalty and support for the state of Israel in its racist apartheid policies. But how is it that the Democrats, who lay claim to all of these progressive ideals and equality and LGBT rights and rights for people of color and minorities and rights for, with respect to immigration policy, ready to like throw down their commitment to support of, decent, humane, legal, ethical, moral immigration policy, can yet, like Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic elites, fall all over themselves to support Israel as the only democracy. It really smells bad, Jamal, and I don't know how the Democratic Party is going to swing this one. I haven't heard Nancy Pelosi say much about the election. Because
they were all hoping to see the demise of Benjamin Netanyahu.
That's right.
Benjamin Netanyahu is an embarrassment to them. So if you like, for example, you heard what Beto O'Rourke said, that he's a racist. I mean, I've never heard a candidate
call Benjamin Netanyahu
from any
party
calling an sitting Israeli prime minister a racist.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
And O'Rourke supports the state of Israel. He has made that
very clear.
And others. So they were all hoping that they will get rid of him because, in fact, I mean, the presence of Benjamin Netanyahu causes a major dilemma, not only to Democrats who support him, or even Republicans for that matter, not all, but also to the Jewish American community in the United States, which has historically supported the state of Israel.
Right.
But now they're saying, well, we're supporting the state of Israel, but we are embarrassed by this guy's actions. He's bringing apartheid. He wants to annex everything, annex the West Bank, annex the Golan Heights. He has made it very clear. I mean, how can you be for human rights, equal rights, walk, in Selma, Alabama, alongside Martin Luther King and say, well, here is someone who says you can only be an equal citizen if you are Jewish in the state of Israel.
Right.
And so how do you reconcile this issue?
Well, that's
so
why
I feel the progressives, at least the so-called progressives, they were hoping because he's an embarrassment. He's a liability for them.
But they haven't said anything, Jamal. Where's Kamala Harris in all of this?
Because I'm telling you, Jess, they were all waiting to wait.
They were hoping
waiting.
they were hoping Gantz would
Yes,
win.
they were waiting to see the demise of Benjamin Netanyahu, and then so they can go back. And I think anyone with an ounce of brain should be happy. And this might sound crazy. People should be happy that Benjamin Netanyahu was elected.
I am.
And I tell you why. Because the election of Gantz would have been a facade. It just would have been a temporary, going back to smoking opium, for those people who believe in the two-state solution.
Right.
And if you look at Gantz's record, here is a guy who was engaged in the bombing and the killing of children in Gaza. And
people
pretty much said...
And people forget that.
He's just basically a BB light.
He is a BB light.
And so had he won, then people say, oh, you see, democracy has taken its course. The Israeli people have spoken. They have gotten rid of this fascist, Benjamin Netanyahu, and now they've elected through a democratic process this great guy who's going to bring peace and harmony back to the Middle East.
Yeah.
So we'll live in another decade or two,
but I think that's
believing that the two-state solution is the right answer. And no, I'd rather let's stick with the devil, who we know very well.
No, but Jamal, I think that's a really good point. By the way, you and I have been making this point for over 12 years now. I just want to remind our listeners of this. I know this sounds terrible. My preference, because I really don't see a difference between Gantz and Netanyahu, I think it's better that the world see what the Israeli government is really about by electing Benjamin Netanyahu. I prefer that they see the reality of apartheid, that they see the reality of racism, that they see the reality of the slow, steady ethnic cleansing that is being created on the ground for Palestinians in historic Palestine. And Bibi Netanyahu, like Donald Trump, likes to show the reality of these situations directly. He has no problem saying we should basically annex, the illegal settlements that are on stolen Palestinian land. We should, align ourselves with political groups that call for the literal ethnic cleansing of Palestine. So I, for one, am not happy. I'm kind of okay with the fact that Netanyahu won because it shows the reality of what Palestinians have to live under. What I'm unhappy with is the silence of Nancy Pelosi. What I'm unhappy with is the silence of Kamala Harris. What I'm unhappy with is the silence of all of the other Joe Biden, of Kirsten Gillibrand.
Wait until Donald Trump, maybe even the Republican, well, I don't know if they can do it without, I guess, the Democrats, invite him again to speak to a joint session.
That never happens.
In Congress.
They will do that.
Which happened under Barack Obama to embarrass him.
Yeah, to embarrass him. He was not invited by the President of the United
States. No, but then so maybe they'll do something different to honor him and to stay on his good side. Anyway, I want to shift gear because we have a couple of topics to discuss.
Yeah, there's some other
So the other thing that is connected, just because, again, and this is a big story, Airbnb has reversed its decision to remove rental listings of homes located inside the illegal colonial settlements in the occupied West Bank. So
wait a minute, Jamal. Wait a minute. Airbnb came out with this big statement.
Right.
It was celebrated across all sectors of the progressive community, celebrated across all of Europe, I might add, and other places all over the world.
Right.
They were given a lot of cred and a lot of support for this. You're saying that Airbnb has reversed its decision now?
Yeah.
What's up?
It reversed its decision.
What happened?
And I think the timing of it also is kind of dubious because people are, when they're focused on Israel, they're focused on the election. So I think they assume that people won't pay attention.
Well, we're paying attention
to this decision. So basically, they reversed the decision. and the move to settle legal action brought against them by hosts who are actually the settlers living on stolen land, and potential hosts and guests against them. This is kind of like the conclusion why they did this.
So lawfare. It was lawfare.
So Airbnb said it would now. So they put I'm going to read some parts of their press release. So they put this cockamamie press release to whitewash their action, right?
What did they say?
So they said that they would now donate all proceeds from rentals in the West Bank to humanitarian organizations. So they're saying, we're going to allow those colonial settlers to profiteer from the blood, sweat, and tears of Palestinians.
Yeah, literally
And
the blood.
keep the money. But, our percentage, we will donate it to a humanitarian organization. And thus, we are wiping our hands clean.
It's BS.
We're doing the right thing. And then, of course, they're ignoring to say that the settlers will be profiteering and that the settlements are considered illegal. Under all international law.
Yeah.
Including the transfer of the settlers into the West Bank. This is a violation of the Fourth Geneva Convention.
Exactly.
The transfer of population. So basically...
So D-E, fail to Airbnb. Airbnb, you have failed your moral, ethical responsibility by caving into these racists.
And I think that...
And caving to international law.
Yeah, and I think, again, they did it when people were busy watching the elections, quietly just slipped that press release. This is a quote from their press release. Airbnb has never boycotted Israeli business, or the more than 20,000 Israeli hosts who are active on Airbnb platform. We have always sought to bring people together. Oh boy, they're bringing Palestinians and Israelis. This is like saying bring people together. You know what that means, Jess? It's like, let's bring the rapist with the rape victim.
Let's bring the slave owners with the slaves.
We are, bringing people together, and we'll continue to work with our community to achieve this goal. And so they backtracked. They're allowing the settlers to profiteer from stolen land, stolen Palestinian land. And, it's kind of ridiculous. And they think now, we're absolved.
But here's what...
We absolved our sins.
And I have another theory, unfortunately, Jamal. I think the humanitarian cause to be really kind of down on Airbnb about this. I won't be surprised if their humanitarian group is the ADL or Friends of the IDF. That's their idea of humanitarian groups, that they're just going to funnel the money back. Well, I think Airbnb needs to be held to account. I mean, they have been getting a lot of bad press for other reasons more recently. They're coming up, and I think the other reason this is happening, Jamal, they are set to have an IPO themselves within the next couple of months. So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I think part of this...
I'm so busy now talking about them, I actually haven't paid attention to this.
Yeah, they have an IPO that's scheduled to come out at some point in the next number of months. They did a calculation, not based on law, not based on ethics, not based on morality, cold, hard possibilities of what they're going to do for their potential future shareholders and their IPO. I consider it a big fail. Another small point that we should let our listeners know, because this is kind of breaking news. The co-founder of the BDS movement, Omar Barghouti, was scheduled to come to the United States today. He was scheduled to come to the United States today for a speaking tour, was denied his visa as he was getting on the plane and forbidden for coming to the United States. It had all been worked out ahead of time, Jamal. He had his ticket. He had his itinerary.
Well, he has a whole program.
He has a whole program. It was approved ahead of time. And guess what?
And he's been here before.
He's been here multiple times before. And as he's at the airport getting ready to board the plane, he's informed by not American officials, Jamal.
Coincidence.
He's informed by Israeli officials
He cannot board.
that his U.S. visa
Has been denied.
has been denied.
Canceled.
Canceled.
Yeah. Anyway, one more story because we
have
few
more than
minutes.
we have
several stories.
We have a number of stories, Jamal.
So this is something that really irritated me. Not just, of course, the act itself is atrocious, but the way the media has been reporting on this. So, today, actually early in the morning, the news broke about this suspect in Louisiana black church fires.
Yes, the three.
Who is basically the son of a sheriff's deputy.
Right.
I didn't know that before until today.
Yeah.
So he's been setting these churches, basically black churches, on fire in Louisiana. And the way he has been presented, again, same old story.
Same old story.
You don't say that he's a terrorist.
No, he has mental health
He has
issues.
mental health issues. Every time a white terrorist commits a heinous crime, we start analyzing them.
Right.
So this guy, and this is the headline, when they talk about, actually when they identify his name, by the way, now, he has been identified, Holden Matthews, he's 20 years old, and he basically, the first sentence in both CNN, Associated Press, this is the first sentence. This is the way how they describe him. And if he was a person of color, it would have been a terrorist,
Domestic
ISIS,
terrorist, ISIS
they'll
supporter.
throw all these things. And this is how it was described, just. A suspect in arson fires at 3 historically black Louisiana churches is a law enforcement officer's son who may have been influenced by black metal music.
Heavy metal.
Yeah.
Metal music.
This is kind of,
you know what? That's really
this is just how they give him
no,
the pass.
but this is irresponsible.
Like he's troubled because he's been listening to this crazy music.
No, that's irresponsible.
Have any
reporting.
music led you to set buildings on fire, Jess?
Never. And I listen to crazy music. So
This is the first sentence. This is the qualifier for his act. That I'm supposed to feel sorry for him is a troubled.
No, it's a pass.
21-year-old.
It's
He's
a
been
pass.
listening to music, bad music. The music forced him to set black churches on fire.
Well, Jamal, you have every right to be outraged and indignant. It's irresponsible reporting. It's an irresponsible use. It's disrespectful for people who are truly struggling with legitimate mental health issues. But it points to this hypocrisy of that when people of color commit these heinous acts, or any kind of act, they are automatically labeled as terrorists. But when people, who basically are in the white community, they always have mental health problems. It's a complete irresponsible reporting. I don't know where you read that from, where that comment.
This one was from CNN.
Well,
headline,
then
and also was from
then
Associated Press.
then CNN needs to be totally held accountable to that. I want to since we're talking about this kind of irresponsible reporting, I feel incumbent upon us. Speaking of hypocrisy, do you know what Donald Trump said to the Republican Jewish community? He gave a big talk.
And I should add to your sentence, imagine if anyone else have said this.
No, what
Imagine
I'm going to tell you what
Ilhan Omar
I want to tell you what
said this.
I want to tell you what Donald Trump said, and imagine if Ilhan Omar said this.
You should just set up the scene. Who was he talking to?
So
and how did
this is the Republic. Basically, these are the elite of the Republican Jewish community. So the Republican Jewish community in Florida is having this big event. They invite Donald Trump to come and speak. He spoke there recently, a number of months ago, and he said to a group of Jewish Americans, "I know why you don't want to take my money, because you want to control your politicians."
This is before.
This is before.
Yeah,
so
this is an older story.
This is an older story. That this is done, and this is not just an anti-Semitic trope. It's purely anti-Semitic. He got away with it. He got a pass, nothing. Now he's speaking to them again, and he says to a group of Americans, this is part of the American Jewish community. He says, I just got off the phone with your prime minister, and Bibi's a great guy. He's your prime minister. And, he goes on and says a few other kind of crazy things. And Jamal, not a peep from Fox News, not a peep from CNN, not a peep from MSNBC, not a peep from anybody in the mainstream media. And again, this is not just an anti-Semitic trope. It's purely anti-Semitic. And I will ask you, what if Ilhan Omar said that?
I mean, listen, it's a crazy thing. This is not the first time. And again, just to clarify, he was speaking on Saturday, this past Saturday.
Just this past Saturday.
In front of the Republican Jewish Coalition. And this is the exact quote he said. I stood with your prime minister at the White House to recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights.
Your prime minister.
Yes.
Speaking to Americans. Your prime minister. So this whole kind of thing about, quote, dual loyalties and things like that. And of course, when Trump says something like this, Jamal, nobody calls it out.
No.
Nobody confronts the ADL didn't say anything. Nothing about this. But they continue to attack Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, AOC on a daily basis because they continue to want to, and what the progressives in the Democratic Party, all they're saying, Jamal, why can't we have an honest discussion about U.S. foreign policy? Why can't we honestly discuss what's happening in Palestine and have an open debate and discussion about what is happening in Palestine? And just by bringing up the question, they're being labeled as anti-Semitic and being attacked. Here you have the President of the United States literally being anti-Semitic and getting a free pass. So we wonder why it is, and this leads to the next thing that I just want to talk about briefly, Donald Trump and Donald Trump Jr. continuing to attack Ilhan Omar is causing her to have death threats against her.
They've already arrested one
who was an avowed Trump supporter.
Yes, he basically threatened her, and they
had to arrest him,
and they found shotguns and handgun in his house. So it's
serious, man.
It's a serious thing. And
it's
then
really
when he keep repeating this time and time again, it's gonna lead to something horrible. I hope not, but it's a very dangerous game that he's playing.
But we think we call it a game, but I believe it's deliberate. I believe that the attacks on Ilhan Omar not only are deliberate, but are intended to create fear, anxiety, and cast this kind of pall over everything. And they don't want these strong women of color to speak, Jamal. That's really what it comes down to. You have these 3 or 4 or more incredibly strong women of color in the progressive wing of the Democratic Party who are saying, let's have an honest discussion about Palestine. And they are getting hammered time and time again.
Yeah, but they're picking up the most on Ilhan Omar.
Yeah, Ilhan,
and we spoke about this before. I think the combination of that she's originally from Somalia.
Right.
She's Muslim.
Right.
She wears the hijab, so the other women, don't stick out like her. She has been outspoken.
Yeah.
And she's a woman.
So,
she has been the poster child of hate for
all the white
supporters,
supremacists.
all the white supremacists. Just when they look at her, she's in Congress. Oh, I forgot to mention, she's a refugee. So they're against the refugees. They are racist against people of color. They are against women.
Yeah.
And, of course, she's Muslim. They are Islamophobes. So all eyes are on her. And she has been basically
vilified.
their poster child of hate, I would say.
So this last thing really quick, and I know we got to go. She called Steve Miller, the
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, we don't have too much time.
But she called him a white nationalist.
No, supremacist or
No,
nationalist?
white nationalist.
Okay, I'm calling him both a white nationalist
and a white supremacist.
Okay.
And what's interesting is that he's the architect of the family separation policy at the border with Mexico.
Another congressman called him a white supremacist.
Right, and it was okay.
It was okay. Nobody mentioned
But
that.
Ilhan saying it.
She said that. I actually personally didn't know that he was Jewish. And I don't care if he was Jewish, Christian, Muslim, whatever.
But this is what I want to say.
So they took that, they said, oh, now because he's Jewish, he's another anti-Semitic trope to call this guy
a white nationalist.
Who's a white nationalist. And now they have videos of him. I don't know if you saw.
I saw the videos.
Latest video. He's talking about immigrants and people who work as janitors, and
they should be picking up the trash.
They should be picking up the trash.
No, he wanted to throw trash on the floor, said they should work for their money, and they should clean up after our mess. This is, the white mess.
He wants a slave working for him.
I just want to say that Stephen Miller's blueprint for the immigration policies of family separation on the Mexico border sound a lot like the policies that are enacted that the Israeli military uses against Palestinians all the time. On that note, Jamal, we have to say goodbye.
We're getting to another show. We ask you, please, to listen to Arab Talk on KPOO San Francisco, 89.5 FM, but also go to our website, arabtalkradio.com. This is where we have all of our archived shows, and you can sign up to SoundCloud, iTunes, and
the rest.
And the rest.
We'll see you next week.
See you next week.